Hey everybody, we are live. It is Tuesday, Christy Nights at Ask the Therapist live on Tuesday nights at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I apologize, I've got some camera issues here. All right, there we go. We're going in and out, in and out. Hey Nathaniel, it's great to see you today. It is great to see you. My dog is barking like crazy. I have no idea what's going on with that puppy, but I'm sure she'll be absolutely fine. Look at that. This camera angle is driving me crazy. So how are you tonight? How have you been this past week? Have you been taking care of yourself? Have you found ways to reach out and give back to others? What have you done this past week that has changed your life or changed the life of someone else in a positive way? Feel free to share with me. As always, every Tuesday night, I come to you live where you are the absolute rock star. You have the opportunity to ask questions, whether it's about life, love, family, grief and loss, parenting, whatever it may be, your career. You have an opportunity to ask me any question and I will answer it for you to the best of my ability, as well as a time for inspiration, motivation, a time to get together and enjoy our tribe, right? Every Tuesday night we come together and share space, and I absolutely love this time of the week. It is one of my absolute favorite times. Right before I jumped on, I was just talking with Paula. She does work with me, and I was talking to Paula about the name of this show. You know, we have used like Ask the Therapist Live for a while now, and it seems that the show has become more than just Ask the Therapist Live. It seems to me that it is become not only an opportunity for you as the audience to ask questions live, but also an opportunity to share heart space, things that we may struggle with, moments of inspiration, life experiences, or perhaps what's currently going on in our community. With that being said, I actually am considering maybe calling it something a little different. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about that? Let's see if we can ask that. Let's see, what can we say? Do you think, we've got a great poll going on, right? We should rename the show. So I was thinking something simple, just like Christy Nights Live, which encompasses whatever we decide to talk about, rather than Ask the Therapist Live. We could get a little fancy and we could say Christy Nights, the revolutionary leader, or revolutionary leadership, but I don't think that quite captures what we're talking about and our audience. Our audience comes from all walks of life, and I want to make sure we're not excluding anybody. But as much as I desire to lift the stigma around mental illness, I think what we're finding too is Ask the Therapist Live closes the doors on a fair amount of people who don't want to enter the space or ask questions out of fear of being known, out of fear of just, being part of that stigma. So my thought is if we rename the show, we can get more people in here to share and lift the stigma once we're inside the space. Again, it's a marketing question, but what are your thoughts? I come every week for you. I come every week to serve you and your community. So let's say yes or no. We'll publish it, and we can see what you think if we were to rename the show, okay? Again, this is just a little bit of fun, but it is a serious note. I am considering that. I think that, we want to look at how can we reach more people, right? How can we reach the people that really need to be in this space and cultivate those relationships? So, as always, Ask the Therapist Live, do you have a question tonight? Do you have something that you have thought about across the week, whether it's a struggle that you have, a concern, or something you would like more clarification on? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? So please feel free to ask on the side in the comment section. You can also private message me for anonymity in Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever method you choose. People have also text messaged me or emailed me. So if you have a question and you want it to be anonymous, no problem at all. Don't hesitate to send it to me that way, or you can state in the comment section. So since I saw you last, let's just give a brief update about what's been going on. And I'm going to get a little comfortable here. What's been going on over this weekend, I went to a conference It was a really cool conference. It was called She Is Conference. Now, it was for women who are Christian women or even non-Christian women, but it was an all women's conference. And I have to tell you, I have never been in a space with all women. Isn't that odd? You would think that by 43, I would have at least been to one women's conference or been to some sort of participation where there was that many women that were just all women, but I actually had not. And it was interesting to look around the room and see around 800 women around me. Now, if you know me, I tend to struggle a little bit with my female relationships. I think women can be hard to get along with sometimes. Sometimes they can be a little bit complicated. And there was even a time where I stood there for just a moment and thought, gosh, men are so much cooler, right? Men are so much cooler. But it was a Christian conference, so I really wanted to pray about that and just lift that from me, because I know through leading my Bible study that there are amazing women out there and there are amazing women to connect with. And I didn't want to feel that in that space. But what I learned about myself is it was okay to trust this group of women at the level that was necessary to participate in the conference. It was okay to trust this large group of women with my thoughts, feelings, worship, because they were safe. And I allowed myself to do that and had an incredible time. The reason why I bring this up is how often in your life, whether it's with men or women or somebody in particular, you enter a space that you just don't feel comfortable. You have this sense of inability to trust. You don't want to let your guard down, although you feel it would be beneficial. How often have you felt that? Is it perhaps at work? Is it at your church? Maybe it's at community events where you walk into a space and you think to yourself, oh, I just don't feel comfortable. I'm not sure if I can trust the people here, right? Sometimes there's merit to that if we've been hurt in the past. However, sometimes there's no merit at all, especially if that group of people has nothing to do with your past. Like this group of women had nothing to do with my issues with trust of women from my past. Therefore, it wasn't them who pained me, and I owed it to myself and to them to grow past that. So think about a time where you struggled with trust, and what was that about? Losing trust in someone we love is very difficult, and we have to work through that, whether they have hurt us or perhaps they weren't consistent in their word. Perhaps their actions were not consistent with their word. Whatever caused the pain of you to lose trust with an individual is different than what I'm talking about. I'm talking about loss of trust with an entire system, right? Loss of trust within a group of women, lots of trust of a church, of your community. This is more of a global loss of trust. I think we can draw this home with our current political situation. Many people with the current, and when I say political, let me clarify, because I don't want to go down that road actually. But what I mean is with the shootings most recently, can we trust our own community and to be out in our community? Right? But what I want to challenge you is when you see or feel that you don't trust in the big picture, if you don't trust a system, I want you to challenge your belief and see, what is that about? What has caused me to lose trust in this group of people? Is it my own past history, or is it actually something that has happened? Once you identify that, the inability to trust, I want you to work through that. I want you to list the reasons that you can trust. So we're really going into a logical place. We're going to a place that's going to lower that anxiety and begin to rebuild the trust, not only in your own judgment, but perhaps in the crowd you're with or the system that you've lost trust in. How many times have you lost trust in a bigger system, right? Go ahead and think about that. Now let's make it a little bit more real to you. Let's make it a little more real to you. What do we do when we've lost trust in our partner? We've lost trust in our spouse. How do we regain that trust? This is assuming that you want to participate in this relationship. This is assuming that trust was broken, but you still care for this person, you still love this person, and it's important to you to repair it. So how do we begin to repair trust in a relationship? This was one of the questions I received this week. It was, my husband doesn't seem to follow through in anything that he does. It's frustrating to me to trust that he's going to get something done around the house, but then he doesn't. How can I begin to trust him again when he tells me he's going to work on it? You know, this is pretty common, whether it's the husband or the wife or the partner. We lose faith, we lose trust in someone when they're not consistent in what they say they're going to do, or perhaps they don't follow through in their word. The first step to building trust is to be able to communicate effectively with the person that you don't trust. In this case, it would be, sweetheart, honey, partner, spouse, I'm struggling to trust you because you said you would take care of mowing the lawn, but yet I mowed it all summer. I'm hurt that you chose to not do that even though you said that. Now this may seem trivial to you, something like mowing the lawn, but the truth is, this is the foundation of trust. This is how we rebuild. We start small. When we know we can count on someone's word, then we can build that level of integrity. We can build that level of trust in them and then go to deeper levels of intimacy. So to rebuild it, it's having that communication with your partner. Then your partner validating how you're feeling and beginning to create a plan on how to work on that. Knowing that you've got a healthy partner, let's make that assumption, or at least relatively healthy, that they want to have a healthy relationship with you. In turn, they're going to work really hard at following through in their word. They're going to work hard at showing you that you can trust them. Your job is to begin to open up your heart just a little bit at a time and allow that reassurance to rebuild with continued communication. When you start to feel anxious, being able to articulate that, stating that you're feeling that way. This isn't easy. Trust me. I have issues with it in my own marriage. There are many times, as I shared with you before, that I forget or neglect to ask for my needs to be met. And then when they're not met, I get upset. And it's his opportunity to hold me accountable and say, but you didn't ask and I don't read your mind. So in turn, although I may feel like, gosh, I can't trust because he doesn't meet my needs, the reality is I'm deflecting. I have to own my part in that. I have to own my part in communicating effectively to get my needs met. And then if he doesn't meet my needs after I've asked, having the communication, not stepping back and withdrawing, not setting up that wall where you don't communicate and you shut down. That's the danger in any relationship, and particularly a marriage. It's much easier to avoid conflict than to work through it. It's much easier to become complacent and step back than it is to step into the fire of conflict. But what I can promise you is if your needs aren't being met and you begin that communication, as difficult as it is, the sky is not going to fall. You will work through it. Sometimes it may take a day or two, but eventually you do work through it if you can consistently work on it, right? We are called to be open and honest and transparent to build intimacy and to rebuild trust when it's been lost. So another question I received is, same with trust, is last week I found out that my spouse cheated on me. What am I going to do? How do we begin to repair this if your partner has cheated on you? This is a really good question. Believe it or not, 70% of marriages, there has been a case of infidelity. 70% of marriages, there has been infidelity within that marriage. That's a really high number. of that 70% of cases of infidelity, the majority has been women. Oftentimes we make an assumption that men are the ones who choose to step out of a marriage. But the truth is, when we do the research and gather that evidence, more women step out of a marriage than men. Are you surprised by that? Does that shock you? So in this case, this was a woman who stepped out of her marriage, and now her husband's looking to trust again. They want to work on it again. That's pretty, in my opinion, that's pretty courageous. When you choose to work on your marriage after there has been infidelity, that is courageous. People will judge, people will say you need to get out, run, once a cheater, always a cheater. That's a myth. It's an absolute myth. If the person who chose to step outside the marriage is willing to work to the heart of the issue and understand what caused them to step out, then there is true healing in this marriage as God is the center. That's essential. We must keep God in the center as we heal. Otherwise, none of it truly makes sense to us. And oftentimes we aren't truly strong enough to get through that all the time, right? We have to have that faith center. So what I say to you, my friend, is I am so sorry that your wife stepped out of your marriage. I applaud you for your willingness to work so hard in your marriage and to repair this. As a result, God will bless you, whether He blesses you within your marriage or it takes a path where you can no longer be together. You will be blessed through this, and you'll have the opportunity to teach others. Most often, there is no reason, if both parties are willing to work on it, there's no reason to go straight to separation and divorce after one or the other have cheated. I know that might sound foreign to you. Maybe you're sitting here saying, gosh, if my partner cheated on me, I would be out of there. You don't know until you're experiencing it. You don't know unless you go through it. So be careful whenever you choose to judge, whether that's silently or to your friends and family. So the first thing to do is to acknowledge that both of you are willing to at least show up for therapy. What I can tell you is rarely do I see couples who are successful in navigating the recovery of infidelity outside of therapy. It's not to say it can't happen, but I have seen couples who will come in for one session, become anxious about the work that needs to be done, and then they leave and they don't come back. And when they resurface, it's when they're separated, going through a divorce, and need some more guidance. But what I have seen with 100% success rate in my practice is a reunion of the couple. They recover from the infidelity, and the relationship is so much more amazing following. That's not to suggest that you go out and cheat to have a better marriage. That's not the case. But what the truth is couples who are willing to do the work after infidelity, they come out much stronger because of the work that they do to repair. They understand each other at a much deeper level than they ever possibly did in the past. This is really powerful, in my opinion. It's very powerful to watch as a clinician and to watch the couple work through something so deeply painful. So my friend, if you and your partner are willing to go into counseling, that's the first step. That first step is saying that we are willing to work on this. The second step is any skilled clinician is going to ask you to commit to a number of sessions that give you the opportunity to dig deep. Chances are there's individual issues on one or the other side that need to be worked through individually as well as a couple. Oftentimes when couples come in, for me, I'll identify that yes, there's cheating, but there's a reason for this, and I need to meet with you separately to work through this. And then when you're strong enough as individuals, we'll bring you back together as a couple to work through some of this really difficult stuff. Now, you know yourself if you have been part of a relationship where there was infidelity. You know, if you don't have to necessarily tell me here, but if the issue is infidelity and that's it, then proceed to counseling, right? And there's an opportunity to work through. The exception, the caveat to this is if one partner refuses to work on things, or one partner has a serious mental health condition or personality disorder. Oftentimes it's more difficult to heal, or if there's addiction involved, it's more difficult to heal. We can start with the work, but if the addiction gets in the way of having clear thinking and building trust outside of the therapeutic setting, it's going to be difficult ultimately to have a healthy marriage. So I hope that answers your question. Really, don't give up. If there is any cheating or infidelity and you're willing to at least commit to some initial sessions through therapy, give it a chance before you flush it down the toilet. God brings two people together with him as the strength. He can truly redeem the relationship when both of you work very hard at it. It doesn't mean that there's a magic wand, right? As Christians, we don't have magic wands where all of a sudden everything's better. We're not puppets on puppet strings. But instead, God calls us in our obedience to be active and to work hard to heal with him in the center. He's not doing the work for us, but he's walking beside us, and we are never alone in that. I hope that answers your question. Do you have other questions? Do you have other thoughts that you wanted to share? We know that infidelity can certainly be a challenge, but at the end of the day, I have seen many couples work through it and become incredibly strong afterwards. So, how was your week? Let's chat a little bit about your week. Last week we talked about the synagogue and what was going on. I shared with you my thoughts and feelings about personal responsibility and accountability. It was a very hot topic. In Pittsburgh, we still see heavy hearts and heavy emotions around the loss of 11 people in the synagogue. People are continuing to grieve, and the community continues to come together. We've also seen multiple losses across our country, every single day. How do you deal with those losses? How do you deal with seeing that on the news on a regular basis? Do you allow yourself to watch it or read the papers? Do you give yourself some space? Did you know exposure to that trauma, even the news, can create vicarious trauma? We call it vicarious trauma or secondary post-traumatic stress disorder. By exposing ourselves repeatedly to tragic stories and trauma, we ourselves can become emotionally injured as a result. Every day we're seeing those images. So yes, that holds true of our video games too, for our children or adults who play video games with that level of violence. What's important to me is that you're able to recognize that as a result of our day-to-day living, we may be exposed to repeated trauma, which can cause vicarious trauma or secondary post-trauma. What do we do? How do we cope with that? That is where we come in with more self-care, the ability to talk about what you see, talk about what you're feeling, to journal, exercise, be able to take those deep breaths, prayer, meditation. Each and every day, you want to be sure that you're doing those things to maintain a healthy lifestyle. If you don't, and life gets busy like it often does, if you don't, that can lead to higher levels of anxiety, depression, negative thinking, suicidal thoughts. It can lead to other psychological distress. We have the ability to prevent misery. Go figure. You each have the ability to prevent misery in your life. Why don't we do it? What keeps us from doing it? Did you ever wonder? You know exactly what to do. Why don't you do it? What keeps you from doing that? There's a variety of reasons. I've heard all kinds of excuses, from I don't have time to I'm too busy. But at the heart of it, most often it's because we don't make ourselves a priority, because we don't believe that we are worth it, or we believe we're invincible and we don't need to do that. It's important that you can do that you do take care of yourself, because at the end of the day, no one else is going to do it for you, right? And so all of those things add up to anxiety, depression, etc. So being able to take care of yourself. Last week we talked about different ways that you can take care of yourself. So as always, I am rambling. It is Tuesday night, Ask the Therapist Live, or Christy Nights Live, depending on if we want to rename our show, where you get to ask any question that you want, whether it's about life, career, sex, marriage, parenting, whatever it may be. You decide, you ask, you're the rock star, and I answer your questions. It's also time for motivation, inspiration, times just to connect. So let me check my social media and see if we have any questions. All right, so checking Facebook, see if anybody has anything. Nothing on Facebook. What about Instagram? Does everybody follow me on Instagram? If you don't follow me on Instagram, head over to Instagram and find Christy Nights and click to follow. I offer you multiple ways to care for yourself throughout the week, words of inspiration, words of motivation, very much the same with Facebook as you see. There's nothing on Instagram. All right, so everybody's doing really good. Love to hear that. Okay. No text messages. All right, so we don't have any questions on social media. What about you guys? Like I said, if you have a question, head over and put it in the comment section. It is great to see everybody here. I'm so excited. Like I share with you, I absolutely love being here. It is just a great place to be. So let me share with you some other things from this week. At that conference, for those of you looking for a book, at the conference, I listened to Jess Connolly speak, and she is a female speaker and a pastor. Really cool. She wrote this book called Wild and Free. Wild and Free is about women. It's a hope-filled anthem for the women who feel she is both too much and never enough. Too much and never enough. So whether you're a woman or you have a woman in your life, Wild and Free is an amazing book. I just started reading it, and I already love it. I'll read you the anthem at the end because I think it's very applicable, whether it's for women or for men, because I know we've got a house full of men with us as well tonight. But Wild and Free by Jess Connolly and Haley Morgan is an excellent book. I got to hear Jess speak. She was very powerful. It talks about sometimes when we feel like we're too much, yet not enough as women. And I think that's a pretty common problem. When you feel like you're over the top, particularly strong women who are alpha women like myself, leaders. Sometimes we feel like, we're way too much for everybody, but yet we're not quite enough. So if you're struggling with that, then please head out and get that book, Wild and Free. We can read it together. You can shoot me a message and let me know that you're reading it. The other book that I got, which is so cool, is I got a new Bible. I haven't had a new Bible in years. My Bible, the last Bible that I had, was from when I was a child, like in 8th grade. And I bought another one that I liked, but it was like because it was pretty. So this book came out in 2016. This is by Xander Van, and it is Cultural Background Study Bible. I am so excited it came today. What my goal to do is to study Jeremiah. So Jeremiah is this amazing chapter. It is considered one of the longest chapters in the Bible. But what I want to study particularly is women of the Bible in Jeremiah. So my pastor, Mark Lutz, over at New Life Ministry, recommended that book. So recommended the style of a Bible. If you want to join me and learn about Jeremiah, let me know. And I can even consider doing some lives around Jeremiah and the study of Jeremiah. My dearest friend Paula and I, we're actually going to dive in. She's getting the same Bible. She ordered it tonight. And we are going to dive in and read through Jeremiah, as well as create some devotions and perhaps a Bible study. Shh, it's a secret. You're the first to hear it. So I'm really excited about that. If you have a favorite Bible that you like, whatever it looks like, let me know. I would love to know what's your favorite Bible. I'm looking forward to the cultural background study Bible. So that was something cool that happened too. All right, so we did a poll. Do you think we should rename the show? If you haven't voted, make sure you vote, because quite frankly, we're tied. So if you haven't voted, should we rename this show? Instead of Ask the Therapist Live, should we just name it something general, like Christy Knights Live, so that we bring in more people who are fearful of the stigma? And then when they're here, we can talk to them about the stigma and we can answer questions for them. So if you haven't voted, I need you to vote. We're at 50-50. That's crazy, right? So clock in those votes. All right, any questions? Any questions for me? All right. It is great to see everybody here tonight. Thank you so much for joining. I'm gonna look at my questions that I received this week, since I haven't heard anything from the audience yet. Let's see what we got gigging. Okay. All right. I have a dear friend, and her and I have been friends for 13 years. I've noticed a change in how she acts towards me. I'm fearful to ask her if something is wrong in case she may not want to be friends anymore. What do I do? This comes from a 17-year-old, which I love that she put her age. You're an absolute rock star for tuning in to Christy Knights Live. I love that you're doing that. Thank you so much for tuning in. So the truth is, we all have problems with our friendships, and we all notice our friendships shift, right? You know, oftentimes we're told that some friends are just for a season, and some friends come into our life for a different purpose, right? So what I'm going to ask you is, if you've noticed shifts within your friendship, like we all do, what's keeping you from asking your friend if there's something going on? What's keeping you from asking her if there is a problem? I'm going to challenge you to first approach your friend. Now, you and I know that teenagers can be a bit fickle at times. So whenever we ask them questions, they may shut down, get frustrated, angry, or defensive. If this happens with your friend, whenever you ask her what's going on, just take a deep breath, give her some space, and then reapproach later. During that time where you take that space, I want you to evaluate, what is God's plan for this relationship for you? Is this a friend that you want long-term? Or is this a friend that's just for a season? The other question I'm going to challenge you with is, many times we expect that all of our friendships will be at the same level. And what I mean by that is, men totally get this and they get it right every time. Men know that when some friends are good friends, other friends are just basketball friends, other friends are just head to the, get a drink friends. So men do really well, but women are so relational. We want to analyze the relationship and the depth of it. And if it's not as deep as we think it needs to be or should be, we begin to panic, feel anxious, as if we're not good enough, and evaluate, is this a relationship that we, even want to have? Like, do they really like me, right? We go personal right away. But the truth is, we can take a lesson from men in our friendships in this way. Some of our friends are going to be of great depth. We're going to have the truest and deepest of friends where we can share intimate conversations, like when our spouses upset us, and know that they're not going to sabotage our relationships. We can share very private things. Other friends, we can't. The connection's a little different. It's not that we can't trust them, It's merely, it's not as deep. So perhaps they're friends we just go shopping with, or perhaps they're just friends that we talk about our children with. That's okay. Not every friendship that we have has to be below the surface, deep relationships. If you have 1 to 2 very close friends that you can share your deepest thoughts with, you are absolutely blessed. Can't tell you how many people come into my office and don't have that. Many men get that. Like, you just don't have, like one great friend and that's about it, right? Everybody else is just kind of fun to hang out with. So women, I want you to reframe this. I want you to be able to see and evaluate. Sometimes friends come and go and they're for a season in our lives. Of those friends that you do have, some are deeper friends and some are friends just to hang out with and have fun with. Some are friends that you just go out with as couples. Not every friendship that you have is going to be deep. So my dear friend that wrote in about her friendship, I am sorry that you are seeing your friendship change, but this may be something positive instead of negative. Be sure you're not blaming yourself, and if there is something that you did, take accountability for it and attempt to move forward. Own it, right? Oftentimes we don't want to own it, nor do we want to rock the boat and talk to our friends. Again, guys get this right. When they're upset with one another, they just tell it like it is and move on. When they were little boys, they would punch each other and be done and move on, right? So guys get this right. Again, like a point for them, where women tend to get caught up in, it's all about me. What have I done wrong? But instead, I want you to evaluate that it may not be about you. And you need to have a conversation about it. Again, when we communicate, the sky isn't going to fall. It will be what it will be. And I know some people cringe with that, but I'm a true believer that if I reach out to you as my friend and I say, you've hurt me, I'd like to work through this. And you say, I didn't do anything to you, whatever. God's will be done in that moment. We're not in the right space at that time. It may come later and we may reapproach and try again, but ultimately, if you trust and surrender in what God has for you, even in your friendships, right, in all aspects of our lives, then you can have peace knowing that you made an attempt to communicate and it will be okay. Now, at 17, it can get a little complicated and not be quite as easy, right? It can be dramatic and rumors and lies. Not that we don't do that as adults. Trust me, women are just equally complicated, even as adults. So if you think it's going to change, not so much. Now you get to pick and choose who you hang out with, though, as adults. It's not like you're stuck in a classroom all day. But my friend, you can absolutely do this. Approach her, see how she feels. If she's not willing to talk, that's okay. Take a deep breath and make sure you're cultivating other friendships. If she is willing to talk, then hats off to you. That's wonderful. Begin to work through what the issue is. Own what's your fault. Be accountable to what you have done in the relationship, and then work to forgive one another to rebuild that friendship. You want to call it out so that you can move forward. Thank you so much for the question. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. So what are your questions tonight on Ask the Therapist Live? Are we ready to publish the results of the post, of the poll? Do you think we should rename our show? That was the question. Do you think we should rename our show from Ask the Therapist Live to perhaps Christy Knights Live, whatever, something a little different so people aren't afraid to come into the show or afraid to share the show? It was told to me that people don't share Ask the Therapist Live because they don't want people to know that they're actually listening to Ask the Therapist Live. They're afraid to ask questions because they're embarrassed. They don't want their name out there that they've asked questions on a show like this. So my intent with asking if we should rename the show is really about, can we pull in more people? Can we share this message with more people so they know that they're not alone, and still try to eradicate the stigma around working with a therapist or mental health? Is that possible whenever we change the name? It's a marketing question, but you're the audience. Each and every week I come to serve you, so what your thoughts are is really important to me. If you believe the name should remain the same, then say, no, let's not change it, right? You get to dictate. That's what I love about this space. And that's what I love about being part of your life, is we get to share ideas and it's a reciprocated relationship. Pretty cool, isn't it? Now, sometimes I wish you'd talk a little bit more, right? But I totally get it. Okay, so looks like everybody's voted, right? If you haven't voted, I'm giving you like 3 seconds to vote. Do you think we should rename our show? And then I'm going to post the poll and let you know what those results are. It definitely has shifted since I asked last time. So thank you for all those who have voted. I really appreciate that. Thank you. So I'm going to put up another question. We can get educated. I love that these are anonymous too, don't you? Okay, so let's reveal it. Oh, sorry. I published the results. Do you think we should rename the show? With 67% says no. So we will remain Ask the Therapist Live until further notice. You told me you like it. So we will remain Ask the Therapist Live. What I'm going to challenge you to do is I'm going to challenge you to share it out. You know, we want to lift the stigma. We want people to know that they are not alone. There is a place for them to be where they can just be real, be raw in the space. They can ask their questions and no one's going to judge them. They can get the support that they need if they don't have a therapist or a coach. So share it out. Be sure to let other people know that this is out there for them so they can have this as a resource too. Many of you come each and every week and I love it. I love to see you here. So I know you're invested and I know you enjoy being here. So invite your friends. Again, there's not a monetary, incentive for me. I'm not being paid, but what you know about my heart, my heart is the desire to save lives. I wake up, live and breathe the desire to save a life. I look at multiple ways that I can save a life. And I truly believe, or at least God can work through me to save a life because I am but his vessel. And this is one of them, right? This is one of them. So I did pop up a new question. The new question is, have you listened to my podcast? This podcast is powerful. I work really hard on the podcast to bring to you, again, more very real and raw stories of people's lives, people who have struggled with anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, sexual abuse, domestic violence, suicidal ideation, suicidal attempts. So go ahead and vote. Have you listened to my podcasts? Have you listened to the podcast? It's really simple, yes or no. I'm just curious to see if I need to do a little heavier marketing on my podcasts. Perhaps many of you don't know where to find it. Perhaps many of you had no idea that I do a podcast, but it's another way that you can be supported each and every week when you're struggling with your emotions, when you're struggling with some difficulties in your life. You have an opportunity to listen to the podcast and gain knowledge, to gain some feeling of belonging. It's another way for you to support yourself. So go ahead and vote. Have you listened to my podcast? The name of the podcast was Unsung Heroes for a long time, but it's been changed to Knights of the Revolutionary Leader, Conversations of Change and Influence. So I'll share the link later, but you just vote, okay? Go ahead and vote and let me know if you've listened to my podcast. Are there other questions? As always, it's Tuesday night, Ask the Therapist Live, where you have the opportunity to ask me a question about anything at all, or share a win. What were some of your wins this week? What was ways that you gave back this week? Would you like to share that with us? Because we like to rejoice in your wins as well as support you in the really difficult times. So go ahead and share if you have something that's weighing heavy on your heart or a win that you have had. What do you think? Go ahead and share while I look for another question. I know I have a couple more here. All right. I feel like we should have Jeopardy music. What do you think? So today I was looking for a way to have online live TV or online live radio. Does anybody know anything about that? Does anybody know like what companies are out there or what internet companies are out there that offer live radio online? So it would be literally like a dedicated station just for me and what we do here, right? Instead of live on Facebook, or in addition to live on Facebook once a week, it would be like a radio station. So I'm gonna do some research. That's what I'm gonna work on this week. But do you know about an internet radio station, or how I would go about establishing a radio station where I could actually talk live to you each and every day for, even if it's just 15 minutes, but just to choose a topic and inspire and motivate you and serve you in some way on a daily basis. What do you think? Anybody know of any internet radio shows? While I look up my questions, what do you think? I think it'd be fun, don't you? I used to have a radio license. Okay. Okay. This question comes to us from, okay. Very good. Have you struggled with bipolar disorder in the past? What is bipolar disorder? So this question comes from a parent, and she says, my son was just recently diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He is 22 years old. I actually don't know what it is or what to expect. Can you help me? So bipolar disorder, it's not necessarily becoming more common. However, we are hearing more about bipolar disorder. More people are willing to talk about it. What is bipolar disorder? What are some of the symptoms of bipolar disorder? This is a great question. If you or your loved one has been diagnosed with a psychological disorder, a mental health disorder, one of the first things I challenge you to do is to educate yourself. You may say, oh yes, my cousin Lisa has depression, or yes, my mother struggled with anxiety. But do you truly know what that means? Do you know how it affects their life, the symptoms? Do you know the history behind it? This is essential in caring for your loved ones, having a greater understanding, and a level of compassion and empathy for them. If you don't educate yourself and you don't know what it is or how it manifests itself, it'll be very difficult for you to support them or to be patient. So when we look at bipolar disorder is more complicated type of depression per se. It is a mood disorder. We have mood disorders and personality disorders. Bipolar disorder includes manic episodes. This is whenever our mood goes from high to low, high to low. So the manic episodes can occur in cycles, or it does occur in cycles. Some people rapidly cycle. And rapidly cycling can be multiple times a day to a week. Others may cycle 4 times a year, but there is typically a pattern to their cycling that clinicians evaluate, and that's how we determine if it's bipolar disorder. That's one of the ways. So what is manic episodes? What is mania? This is a high level of energy that the person may experience. They have a reduced need for sleep, and they have a loss of touch with reality in some ways. It's then followed by depressive episodes, such as low energy, low motivation, loss of interest in their daily activities. And the mood episodes last. They can last, days to months. And they also may be associated with suicidal thoughts. Oftentimes, whenever someone is cycling through mania into a depressive episode, that's when we see the suicidal ideation. Whenever they're in the mania state or the manic episode, they often feel really good about themselves. They feel much happier. You may notice that they speak at a much more rapid pace. They may spend more, be more risky in sexual ways, or just more risky in general. That can be as simple as, but dangerous as, speeding, right? They may be awake and unable to sleep for multiple days at a time. It could be 4 to 5 to 8 to 10 days at a time where they do not sleep. You can imagine what that's like on the body. And oftentimes in a manic state, it could even represent itself more seriously, very large purchases. Did you see the movie with Richard Gere, Mr. Jones? It's one of my absolute favorite movies, but it definitely shows you what manic depression or bipolar disorder looks like. It's an extreme case, but Richard Gere plays a client who has bipolar disorder. And he makes very large purchases. I worked with a client that during his manic phase, he would purchase things like a yacht, a mall, a plane. He was making very large purchases. And then when he went down into a depressive episode, he literally destroyed those items, whether it was through smashing things, burning things, just deep, deep depression and shame. And it was very difficult. So of course, what I'm referring to is someone who's unmedicated. Someone with bipolar disorder that doesn't take medication tends to experience these highs and lows. Oftentimes, they love their highs, so it's difficult to desire medication. They don't want to necessarily be compliant because they don't want to lose that high, but they're so devastated with the low. So some of the other things someone with bipolar disorder may experience is major mood swings like anger and apathy, apprehension, euphoria, general discontentment to guilt, to hopelessness. Behaviorally, you're going to see someone who is irritable. They tend to have risk-taking behaviors, like I said, more disorganized behavior, unable to focus, more aggression, agitation, crying. They experience a realm of emotions that can be overwhelming for them and for their family members. They can have excessive sleep, right? So when they're in their depressive mood, they may sleep excessively. Where in the manic stage, they may not sleep for days. Sometimes they feel restless or extremely tired. Weight gain, weight loss. Do you see how we're seeing like a very one extreme to the other, right? So what do we do now that we know our family member is diagnosed with bipolar disorder? I don't want to just share with you what it is and explain what could occur, but I want you to know what to do. First and foremost, we have an amazing organization within our community across the globe. It's called NAMI. NAMI is the National Alliance for Mental Illness. NAMI supports family members of those with a diagnosis, any diagnosis. You can join the group, and it is a group that meets on a regular basis, and they do education as well as emotional support. And it's with trained individuals that supports family members of someone who's been diagnosed with a mental health condition. I'd like you to join NAMI. As a mom and for your son, get the support you need. Get the support you need. And I can certainly share that website at the end of our show. That's the first thing. The second thing is you're doing what you need to do. You're getting educated. Third, understand the medication. See how your son wants you to support him. Ask him, what can you do? How does he want to be supported? He is an adult. Oftentimes, people who are bipolar may disappear for days at a time. They may not come back for a long period of time. And this can become very scary for family members. So establishing some boundaries, establishing if he's still living with you, establishing some house rules, ways to communicate effectively will be really helpful too. Bipolar disorder can be unpredictable when not medicated. If your son is not medicated and it's unpredictable, that's when the boundaries are really important. The house rules are really important. Even if it's two adults, like perhaps it's your wife or your husband diagnosed with bipolar disorder, establishing a safety plan is essential. So whenever they are struggling, they're able to talk about it. I definitely recommend medication. We have seen through research and through evidence, bipolar disorder is most effectively treated with a combination of medication and therapy. Be sure your son or your loved one is in treatment, is seeking therapy. This can be extremely challenging to get them into therapy if they're not willing. Obviously, you can't force them, but you can provide that olive branch on a regular basis. Now, don't get me wrong, I've met with family members that are absolutely exhausted, burnt out by their loved one's disease, disorder, bipolar disorder, and they just have had it. Their loved one has robbed them, their loved one has been abusive. I totally get that. I don't want you to risk your own safety. That's what makes it so important to have those boundaries, to have those house rules or the understanding among partners of what it looks like so everyone is safe. So there's a glimpse into bipolar disorder. I hope that helped answer your question. You are an absolute rock star mom for asking that question, wanting to educate yourself. And I want you to know you're not alone. I am right here with you. Your beautiful tribe of our group is here too. You are not alone. Please seek out NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness, for support. They're very good at supporting people with mental health conditions, their loved ones, their family members. And be sure that you understand the medication if you have to be a part of that, and you have a support system for yourself of family, friends, etc. Thank you for that question. That was a great question about bipolar disorder. So do you have any questions? Is there anything that you want to ask? So have you listened to my podcast? Did you vote? If you haven't voted, please vote. I'm going to go ahead and publish the results. This poll, these last couple polls probably haven't been as fun as the ones last week. We were kind of having fun last week, but I'm curious. I'm curious as to, what your thoughts are. And it's anonymous, so I love that even more. So, there's not hesitation, right? So have you listened to my podcast before? How cool is this? The results show that 100% of you listen to the podcast. That is awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for being listeners of the podcast. I really appreciate that. I love doing the podcast. And as you know, you can go to my website and you can apply to be a guest on my show. I would love to have you on my show. So thank you for listening to Knights of the Revolutionary Leader, Conversations of Influence and Change. You can find it on C-Suite Network, or you can find it on my website at christyknights.com. So thank you for listening to that. I absolutely love it. So let's see. Let me ask another question. Okay. Okay, so the question is, would you go to therapy if you needed it? Would you go to therapy if you needed it? Let's answer that question. And the reason I ask that is I've got plenty of clients, so that's not the issue. But I want to know how many of you are comfortable seeing a therapist? How many of you are not apprehensive about going to therapy if you were struggling? Be honest. Again, it's anonymous. I don't see your vote. We just reveal the results. If you needed therapy, and I know many of you think, I'll never need therapy or I don't need therapy. Here's the deal. Let's assume every single one of you need therapy, because that's the truth. Every single person will benefit from therapy. It is a great way to learn about yourself. It's a great way to gain insight and to develop resources. You come into my office, I share a wealth of resources with you to feel good about yourself, about life, and to work through any of your struggles. So quite honestly, even though I'm a bit biased, I believe everybody needs to experience therapy, and I believe everybody needs a therapist. I know it sounds crazy and you might disagree, but I call bullcrap on you, because everybody could benefit from gaining insight into themselves. So would you be willing to go to therapy if you needed it? And we're going to make an assumption that everybody needs therapy. So would you go? And I'm not going to be offended, so you don't have to worry. Just vote truthfully. Vote truthfully. All right, any questions? You guys are quiet tonight. We didn't have any questions tonight. My goodness. Either you guys are doing absolutely great and you feel amazing, or you're just quiet. I just love being in your space. Okay, so I don't see any questions. We are nearing our hour. We're actually a little over our hour. No big deal. Let's double check and make sure we don't have any questions on social media before we wrap up. It's been an amazing time with you guys tonight, as always. I love to be in your space. I love to just share this time with you and serve you in this way. It just makes me feel so good to know that we have each other and that we have an opportunity to care for each other in this way. So just double checking social media. While I do that, I also want you to make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to my podcast. I want you to also follow me on Instagram. Make sure you're getting full benefit from all the services that I offer you. They're at no cost to you. All right. And we don't have any more questions. Now, you may not have a question, but before we go, let's try this. Let's try this. So you don't have a question. Do you have a topic? Now, we're not going to spend a lot of time tonight, but do you have a topic you would like me to address? Is there a specific topic that you're curious about, or you're thinking that, yes, Christy, could you speak on this topic? Please go ahead and share it in the comment section. Go ahead and share it in the comment section, and I will take note, and I will begin to talk about your topics and what you want to hear about. Oftentimes we do it through questions, and that's great. But I also can talk in general about topics of interest to you. So what do you think? Are there topics that you want to hear? I might just call a few of you out. How about that? Since nobody's participating, like a teacher, I might just have to say, okay, give me a topic. So let's see, who can I call on? Everybody's going, okay, we're done, we're off, we're offline, don't call us out. Can you share a topic? What do you think? What do you think? Who usually says hello that wouldn't be afraid to offer? Barb, how about you? Nathaniel, you. Do you have any topics you would like me to talk about? Debbie, what about you? Ivan, hey dude, how are you? Do you have a topic you would like me to talk on? Who else? Bill or Dan, do you have a topic? Jean, Cheryl, look at this, all these great people here. Jay, what about you? Commissioner, how you doing, Commissioner? It's great to see you. Do you have a topic? What do you think? So I'm going to publish the results for if you would go to therapy. Are you people all like being truthful? Okay, did you all vote? Would you go to therapy? Did everybody do that? If everybody voted and this is the answer, you guys truly are like absolute rock stars. Absolute rock stars. Okay, here we go. 100% said they would go to therapy. 100% said you would go to therapy. You're rock stars. Either that or like one person voted. So that is awesome. That is awesome. I'm glad to hear that you know that that's a resource. So one of the other cool things that happened this week is I was approached by a CEO of a medical community, and I can't reveal any information except that he and I spoke about meeting with his organization and speaking at a local hospital. How cool would that be for me to speak at a local hospital about suicide prevention and awareness, to be able to teach physicians and teach the healthcare industry how to care for themselves. They are the #1 rated, unfortunately, the #1 rated in terms of the suicide and number of suicides per profession is physicians. You know, they're pretty high. Dentists are high. I also am meeting with a dental practice at the end of December, talking with them and their practice to educate and share with them about how to care for employees, as well as engagement and lowering the turnover rate and burnout rate, talking to them about mental health issues within the dentistry world. So really psyched about that. So excited to be collaborating with the medical community, with the dentistry community. These are two of the highest that is affected by suicide. And our third is attorneys, and I meet with them in January. If you know anyone who is in the mental health profession and needs a professional speaker, whether at conferences or trainings at hospitals or within their own office, or a dentist, same thing, conferences or in their office, let me know. If you know of someone looking for a speaker who can be real and raw about psychological health, suicide prevention and awareness, just share my info. We had Nathaniel last week who shared my info with a church in Georgia, and I collaborated with them to help them develop their website, to look at how can they begin to educate their congregation, their community on suicide prevention and awareness. So shout out to Nathaniel for making that amazing connection. Thank you so much. I had a great time meeting with the church and looking at their website. So if you have anybody that you know that needs those services, just send them my way. I appreciate that. So this week, you're going to listen to the podcast. You're going to follow me on Instagram so we can connect. I want to see what you're doing too. And if you have any questions, you're going to send them my way. As always, I absolutely love you being here. I absolutely love this time that we have together. It means so much to me. And if you know how, or a company for live radio online, let me know. I want to check them out. I'm looking to be able to do that. I would love to be live on the radio online on a daily basis so I can serve you in that way. It wouldn't change this. We'd still do Tuesday nights, but I was thinking something like in the morning as you're driving into work, I could share a message, even if it's for 15 minutes, or perhaps at lunchtime. I'm not sure the time, but I'm looking into that, and I would love for you to help me with that. All right, so today, usually we read from Brave Enough, right? Usually we read from this, which I absolutely love, but today I'm going to read from this, Wild and Free, and the Anthem of Wild and Free. This is applicable in my mind to both men and women, so I'm going to share it. The world may tell us we're too much and never enough, but we can walk wildly in who God created us to be and rest freely in the work Jesus did for us. We do not have to be confined or conformed by cultural expectations. We are unchained from our past and unafraid of our future. We choose compassion over comparison. We love without condition, without reserve. Our eyes are on God. We hold nothing back. We run fast and strong. We do not hide our light. We aren't wild and free for our sake alone. We rather sing life, hope, and truth over the world with abandon, just as our God sings over us. We are wild and free, and we are poised to do mighty things in Christ alone. My gosh, how powerful is that? How powerful is that? I'm going to read it to you one more time, and then I'm going to say good night, even though I could just spend all evening on with the anthem of Wild and Free from the book Wild and Free. The world may tell us we're too much and never enough, but we can walk wildly in who God created us to be and rest freely in the work Jesus did for us. We do not have to be confined or conformed by cultural expectations. We are unchained from our past and unafraid of our future. We choose compassion over comparison. We love without condition, without reserve. Our eyes are on God, and we hold nothing back. We run fast and strong. We do not hide our light. We aren't wild and free for our sake alone. Rather, we sing life, hope, and truth over the world with abandon, just as our God sings over us. We are wild and free, and we are poised to do mighty things in Christ alone. So, my dear friends, we wrap up another evening of Ask the Therapist Live. I thank you for being here this week. I want you to remember that you are wild and free in the name of Jesus. You be you. Be real and be raw. Live with strength, knowing that you have the ability to control your own emotions. You create your own happiness. You determine if you are miserable. It is up to you to shine the light, to shine your light within so that you may save lives. Ask yourself this week, ask yourself, how can I be wild and free in Jesus? How can I be who he created me to be? This morning, I woke up at 3 a.m. and all I could think of was the simple phrase, I am who I say I am. I am who I say I am. Trust me. It truly was this quiet whisper in the night for me to remember that my God is mighty, and I do not have to hide how I feel about my God, nor do I have to hide that only through him I am strong and I can be present and real for each and every one of you. I challenge you to do the same. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be wild and free in the name of Jesus, to be wild and free for who he created you to be. You have the ability to save a life through teaching value by loving others. And as always, each and every week, I remind you, you are never alone. I love each and every one of you. I don't need to know you, and I don't need to personally have you as a friend outside of virtual, right? I can still love you. I love you because God created you beautifully. No matter where you've been or your past transgressions, no matter the skeletons in your closet, just like the woman in the Bible who bled for 12 years. She bled for 12 years and was condemned by her community. She was condemned. Nobody wanted to be near her or around her. 12 years she bled. Jesus walks into the town. She touches his coat. She is healed. A woman of impurity is healed, and God says, no matter your sins, you have been forgiven and made clean. So, my friends, no matter where you have come from, no matter what choices you have made, you have been forgiven when you ask for forgiveness. Now go. Go and show love. Go and show peace and joy in your life so that you can save lives, and we will eradicate suicide together. I love you, and I will see you next week. And you are never alone. You know exactly where to find me. Have a great evening. Good night.